Are manga actually getting worse? If you listen to the people on the internet, you might think so. But is that really true? Manga drawings are getting worse. If you look at the development of the drawings in long-running shonen series such as One Piece or JJK, you might quickly conclude that manga art is getting worse. If we compare panels by Jiji Akutami from the Shibuya arc with panels from the final battle, the difference is enormous. I actually think that Akutami is a very good artist, because he's incredibly good at depicting speed and scenes. But on the final arc, much of that disappears. Even in One Piece, you can see that Oda is no longer working as cleanly as he used to. And these are not isolated cases. People keep saying that long manga series look worse and worse over time. But can we say, based on such a development, that manga drawings are worse nowadays? No, not really. I think it's perfectly normal for some mangaka to be exhausted. Many of them work under inhuman conditions. The mangaka of One Piece once said that he only sleeps 3 hours a day. And I guess that's not an isolated case. Time and again we hear about people destroying their own bodies because of their job as a mangaka. So it's absolutely normal that the drawings sometimes suffer as a result. However, this negative trend is not seen in all mangaka. Araki, the mangaka of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, has been delivering consistently for decades. And in general, many people also think that his drawings have continued to improve. By the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, I would be very happy if you could do so. These videos take a lot of time to make and it would be a great help to me. Today's manga are uglier. We now know that manga can deteriorate over time purely in terms of the drawings. But what about manga that have only recently been published? For example, Demon Slayer. It is considered to be the most poorly drawn manga ever, objectively speaking. And based on its success, Demon Slayer somehow represents the medium of manga today. If you compare Demon Slayer with earlier successful manga, such as Dragon Ball, you can see immediately that manga drawings have gotten worse. But I personally find this comparison to be absolutely weird. Of course, I also think that Dragon Ball has cooler drawings than Demon Slayer. But I have the feeling that this comparison only exists so that people can say that everything was better in the past. You can easily turn the comparison around. Let's take a look at manga panels from today and from the past. That's Shura no Mon, by the way, a shonen manga that's been running since 1987, and it's not even unknown or anything. The manga sold just as many copies as Seven Deadly Sins or Ranma. The other manga was Dandadan, one of the most beautiful and coolest battle shonen manga currently available. Works like these show time and again that there are still many beautiful drawn manga out there today. And that's just one example of many. There are also series such as Spy Family, Sakamoto Days, Ichi the Witch, Centuria, Shujin X, and the latest JJK sequel. And those are just titles from Shonen Jump magazine. Of course, Shonen Jump doesn't only feature beautiful drawn manga, there are also a few total failures, but that was also the case in the past. Objectively bad. Can manga even be objectively bad or well drawn? Maybe that's a hot take, but I don't think there's any objectivity there. But let me explain. I don't think I'm saying anything new when I say that Vagabond is extremely detailed. The mangaka behind the work, Inoue, puts a lot of time into each of his panels. When you compare Vagabond to other manga, the drawings seem to be in a completely different league. So can we talk about objectively good drawings here? What if some person says that they don't think the Vagabond panels are as good as, for example, the manga panels in Gachiekta? We can objectively state that Vagabond attempts to capture realism rather than Gachiekta. Gachiekta, on the other hand, objectively attempts to pursue an abstract style. However, can we say that one is objectively better than the other? You could say that you like Vagabond more because it's objectively more realistic than Gachiekta, but that's where it ends. Is Vagabond objectively better because the panels took more time to create? Or because Inoue draws the manga in a detailed style? Or because Inoue has had more extensive art training and therefore must be objectively better? Or because Vagabond expresses more with its panels through symbolism, for example? But wouldn't that also be subjective? Should one then ask the mangaka themselves to get an objective assessment? So you see what proportion this takes on. But if everything is subjective, why bother trying to create something good? Objectivity only arises because a large number of people share a similar opinion. A manga is objectively bad because it's at the bottom of my anime list. But maybe there's someone out there who sees something in the High School Musical manga that no one else sees. At that point, it doesn't matter if something is objectively bad as long as you like it. And it's the same with manga drawings. You can objectively say that one panel has more detail than another, but you can still subjectively prefer another manga panel. And that's fine. Once we start trying to evaluate every aspect objectively, there's no point in discussing works anymore. You may find the Demon Slayer drawings better than those of Berserk, and that's perfectly okay. If a person prefers a simpler and cleaner style, that's perfectly fine. Objectivity is just an illusion. David Hume wrote in his book Of the Standard of Taste, beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind which contemplates them. But he also once said, I have 4 reasons for not writing. I am too old, too fat, too lazy, and too rich. Changed. Manga has been in print for so many decades indicates that it's completely normal for some things to change. Osamu Tezuka started the manga game after World War II and influenced this medium like no other. To this day you can see something that Osamu Tezuka introduced back then in pretty much every manga, be it the big eyes, the story writing, the paneling and so on. But manga is no longer as small as it once was. Osamu Tezuka's idea has grown into a medium worth millions. There are always new manga coming out, but there are also manga that were not so successful and never really established themselves. With such a huge selection and so many different mangaka, it's only natural that the works develop in different directions. Some mangaka tend to take a more realistic approach. Their drawings are almost like portraits. Other manga, on the other hand, lean more towards cartoons. That's something Osamu Tezuka liked to do back in the day too. And then there are others who do their own thing completely. But what do I mean by that? Over time an incredible number of styles and ways of writing stories have developed. Perhaps to stand out from the crowd, or perhaps to tie in with times gone by. But just because a manga leans more towards cartoons, it's no less valuable. People always look back and say that they want that, but they don't understand that that and that are actually the same thing. They are both based on the same idea, but focus on completely different things. The future of manga. I think that as AI continues to spread throughout society, we are going to see an increasingly shady world filled with scammer exploiting it. Recently I came across a drawing and thought, this is something I drew, right? And I was shocked to find out that it was actually created by AI. When I draw manga, I add subtle personal elements that make the work uniquely mine. But this AI generated piece even mimicked details like the way I draw eyelashes. This is by the way a comment from Araki, the creator of JoJo. We already mentioned him at the very beginning of this video. Araki expresses his displeasure here. Ever-evolving AI can now recreate manga panels with pinpoint accuracy. So what does that mean for the future? AI was already being used in 2023 to add a new chapter to Osamu Tezuka's classic Blackjack. And that is just so weird. Osamu Tezuka tried to draw attention to social issues with his manga. The core idea behind manga is that people should care more about the planet again. AI has consumed vast amounts of resources and destroyed exactly what Tezuka always stood for. But there are also some positive aspects. The Japan Association of Translators is opposed to AI. They are the largest translator organization in Japan and have been since the 1980s. They believe that AI is not capable of translating language well enough. People also repeatedly criticize the use of AI in art online. So are manga getting worse and worse? I don't really think so. Often it's different styles, standards, or simply our nostalgia that gives us the feeling that manga are worse nowadays. Even in the past there were works that didn't necessarily look like Berserk, and that's totally fine. Every work has different aspiration and wants to tell a different story. In the end you have to decide for yourself what you find appealing and what you don't. There's no right or wrong. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Feel free to write Araki in the comments so I know you stuck around until the end. And please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more videos. Feel free to like the video as well, and bye.